The d6 pawn is hanging. I was expecting this to get messy, but not this quick.
Yeah, just within the space of 2 or 3 moves, when we had Danny with us, it looked like Fabiano was in full control, no problems at all. Now suddenly it is pure chaos, and I think we have to dive deep as the players now tick down to the 4-minute mark. Black's last move was rook to f8. I just want to recap that last 3-move flurry. It was here. With everything roughly balanced, Magnus decided to motor forward with his pawn. If this pawn was captured, then he would flick in the move he actually played in the game, removing this knight before then taking a pawn in the center, either with his knight or with a pawn. Instead, Fabiano said, okay, I don't want to allow you to get active. I'm going to plant a strong knight in the middle. And after this capture, White's knight coming forward, I am shocked that Fabiano had the calmness, the incredible calmness to ignore this pawn's attack. And Magnus says, I'm calling your bluff. Rook to f8 hints at the sacrifice that Tanya mentioned. Magnus just takes a pawn, and now White's king is about to be blown open.
Take that knight. Sacrifice the exchange right now, because if the rook takes knight, pawn takes rook, queen out to h4. The rook on b8 will about to swing to f8, hit the f3 pawn. The h3 pawn's under attack. There are so many black pieces heading in the direction of the white king. So I don't know what Magnus sees here, but it's looking very scary for his king.
I think Magnus sees Fabi's clock, because this means that Fabi has to make some critical decisions, and he starts with a sacrifice, but the eval bar says it's the wrong one.
Wow, this is a very human approach, not yet investing so much material, not giving up the exchange like we were advocating. I think it was pretty much a two-forked road there, and he went for the other option. Now rook takes knight is a threat, because the bishop is actually pinning a pawn to the queen. The idea is that this pawn on g2, I was going to say, was overloaded. Now the black bishop is dropped, but so is the white knight, and now he has a dilemma. The rook is attacked, this pawn is attacked. Fabiano needs to justify his recent decision. This is really getting sharp now.
Can he sack the exchange a second time? Now rook takes bishop, because if pawn takes, the knight hops in there, forking the queen and the rook. This is getting extremely sharp. Thin margins for both players. I think, unfortunately for Fabiano, his position is a little bit more precarious. He actually takes on e3 with the knight, and the eval bar is going up even more. It loves Magnus' position. He was able to push the pawn e5, open the board up, and his pieces have been flowing.
Yeah, just compare this white knight, a beautiful stallion there, to this black bishop on the edge of the board, which isn't really participating. Magnus has it, again, two-choice position right now. Take the rook, take the knight. Which one are you going to capture? Maybe taking the knight, because this black rook could well find itself trapped a bit later on. And, I mean, this is still a crazy position. White's king is slightly airy here. I've got to favor white just because of the beautiful knight, but still anyone's game.
And that g6 pawn always hanging. Magnus Carlsen with the committal decision. The knight takes pawn, giving Fabiano a big opportunity, missed by Fabi. And now it looks like Magnus is in a driver's seat, but he goes for a different approach. Instead of capturing on e1, he gives the rook back, still loving that knight on d6, threats with the queen, penetrating on f7. c6 pawn is hanging right now. Still trouble for Fabi.
If you put that white pawn on the g-file, I think Fabi is pretty much lost. But considering the white king is open, that is going to give Fabi sufficient counterplay. I'm looking at the clocks, Fabi a little bit ahead, but it's about to be even on time. I think it's anyone's game at this point. The knight on d6, that's a stallion. It's beautiful up in there. But the white king, it is exposed. The d4 pawn's on a dark square, and if black's piece is a queen on h4, a rook on f8, things of that nature, there could be a counterattack.
Yeah, and sooner or later, at least the knight is on a dark square, so you will be able to remove it. Fabiano, he needs to be accurate. It feels like black is the one trying to save this game. Magnus is the one trying to make things happen, meanwhile, still in the balance. But yeah, Fabiano needs to play quickly and accurately to hold that equilibrium.
And that's one of the hardest things to do in chess, to be fast and precise in a chaotic position like the one that we have in front of us. And this is the approach that has to be there, right, to get the wins in, where you might not be playing objectively the best moves, but posing the biggest practical questions to your opponent, giving them the opportunity to go wrong.
And honestly, that's a great description of what's happening in the other game as well, where Nodirbek Abusatar, we see the eval bar on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Better for him all of a sudden. It was a position earlier on where we were talking about, like Wesley, he's playing really quickly, that pawn for black was loose. Nodirbek has allowed Wesley to go wrong. Doesn't happen very often, but he is better in that game.
Yeah, they're in the endgame over there, and we all know Nodirbek's skill, his expertise in the endgame. Meanwhile, this one, Fabiano does immediately drop back with his bishop to challenge that stallion, the white knight on d6, on that outpost. It is giving up a pawn, but he's saying, who cares? That black c6 pawn is weak anyway. If white's queen goes and captures it, it's more important, more urgent to get rid of the knight. I think a very good practical decision, especially with clocks ticking down. Black's king, I should mention, has a nice safe hiding spot on h7. White's king going to be out in the open for the rest of the game.
Very, very interesting chess being played here. Combative play by both Fabi and Magnus. Magnus does take the pawn on c6. Fabi will get rid of that stallion on d6. If Magnus was to recapture and with the queen and trade the queens off, I think that would just end in a draw with Black's rook sliding onto d8 and picking up that passed pawn. If Magnus wants more, he has to recapture with the pawn. Is he thinking of throwing in a check? And does that check really achieve anything in the position?
Yeah, the only good thing I see about giving a check right now for white is that if the white queen slides back to d5 check and then next move wherever the black king goes takes the bishop with the pawn, then white's queen on d5 actually stops the black queen from jumping out with checks herself. So he does throw in that move as you predicted, Tanya. Really nice spot there, and suddenly Fabiano has an issue. He has to deal with those two kind of past white d-pawns. One of them is weak, luckily, and he will shortly go for it with the black rook. If Magnus can maintain the d-pawn, he'll win. If not, it should still be a draw.
And the h3 pawn also under fire right now, but Fabi's big idea is to slide that rook to d8, double down. Look at the traffic jam, as you like to call it, on the d file, Robert. Does white have enough time to activate his own rook in the position with the open e line?
I'm not a traffic cop, but I do think I'm going to clear traffic on the d file. You're going to take that pawn on d6. We might see some trades, and there will not be too many pieces remaining. The problem for white is, yes, you can free up your own rook, but that h3 pawn is loose as well, and there may be a series of checks that the white king cannot escape. It won't be a checkmate necessarily, but we could see a draw by endless checks. And so the black queen perfectly placed in front of a passed pawn, rook joining the party. I just don't see it for Magnus. He's down to 40 seconds. He's under that at the moment. He plays king g2. He's giving up the d6 pawn. Without that pawn, I don't see any winning chances whatsoever for white, but black may have some.
Yeah, look at this last move. Fabiano chooses the correct square for his rook. I actually think black should be keeping the queens on the board. So bring the rook to d8 would have been fine too, but would have led to a potential queen trade. Magnus is so strong in these endgames. Magnus has the passed pawns. Who has the safer king? It's black. So keeping queens on gives you attacking potential long term. And I do remember Fabiano, didn't he win a game against Alireza Firouzja with a very similar dynamic? Just the heavy pieces, the major pieces, queens and rooks, where the opponent had a passed d-pawn, but the opponent also had a weak king. He won that one with black in similar circumstances.
He did, and this one, that's why Magnus is trying to use his pass pawn, saying that black can't go all in for an attack. That d-pawn is a passer, hard to stop. So I think black needs to plant his own forces on that d6 square, and I don't think there will be any progress for either side.
Yeah, looking very balanced now. It feels like black found all the accurate moves. Maybe black can put some pressure on, but ultimately this last turn by Magnus, rook lift, as we like to say, showing off with these rooks now. He does have one guardian of the king. White's rook can always slide across on the third rank to block, if necessary, act as a bodyguard. This one should be a draw due to the reduced material.
The only chance for Magnus here is to try to get the d-pawn moving, but for that you need the queen to assist it from that central e5 square. But whenever you plant it there, Fabi's rook will find activity on the 5th rank with a tempo. So very difficult to imagine either side making progress here. Now the queen e forward. If Fabi was to move that rook now, the d-pawn moves forward, and there's a lot happening on the right side of the board as the players are down to seconds.
Yeah, Wesley So against Abdusatorov. Black is a pawn up. Black has 4 versus 2 on the king side. White has 2 versus 1 on the queen side. But yeah, just a bit of basic arithmetic. And Abdusatorov surely is the only one with winning chances. Wesley So, maybe one of the players of the tournament so far, fighting for his life.
And Abdusatorov's up almost a minute on the clock on the right-hand side of your screen. On the left-hand side, Magnus Carlsen down to 9 seconds. Fabiano with 35. He's putting pressure on Magnus on the clock, even more so the board. Oh my gosh, Magnus has to move.
Oof, Magnus really cutting it fine. He needs to just escape this game. He needs to try and bail out with a draw. He's trying to repeat right now. Second time we've seen this position. Can Fabiano create winning chances? Hustle Magnus on the clock.
And there was in the round robin where Fabiano did decline the repetition and went on to lose that game with the white pieces. He, for the second time in the Champions Chess Top Finals, declines the repetition against Magnus.
Magnus pokes his king out of its hiding place there, pokes it out, staring down in the center. And, okay, Fabiano dancing around with his queen. And look at the line of the totem pole on the d-file right now. Black's queen is doing a great dance, coming all the way around, but White's king is seeking shelter on the queen side. What a journey, what an adventure.
And if we look at the board on the left-hand side, all of Magnus's pieces are protected. He made sure that if you take this pawn on f3, I'm going to get the passed pawn. So Fabi is stuck playing a waiting game, preventing that d5 pawn on the left-hand side of the screen from advancing. He places his queen, he blockades it. But Magnus doing an amazing job getting his own king to safety. So now it's not like the white king's in danger, but great active play from Fabiano.
These players are so strong. Magnus, how did he imagine that? How did he find that creative idea? But Fabiano is trying to blow open the new shelter of the white king. It's getting really dramatic on that left board. Wesley So, meanwhile, still in a bit of trouble against Abdusattorov, but still within the realms of safety on the other semi-final clash. Ooh, it's hard to predict. What do we think is going to happen? Will we see a winner in one of the semi-finals?
I'm just amazed to watch the king march by Magnus Carlsen and then Fabiano Caruana striking on that side of the board, not wasting any time to get to it. And he's also eyeing a potential a-pawn push at some moment. And I see, Robert, that something catches your attention.
Yeah, that a-pawn push for Fabiano, but both players down near 10 seconds. And now on the right-hand side, the advantage is going for Black. Nodirbek Abdusattorov, and that bishop maybe up the pawn, like David said. But yeah, I have to be focused on Magnus Carlsen's king. He goes after Fabi's king. Fabi says no. So whose pawns are weaker? Whose king is safer? It's the ultimate question.
Yeah, it feels like Magnus's king has been in trouble for so long, but no way through. The moves are coming thick and fast on both boards right now.
Can you go a3?
Valuation bar's dropped. Fabiano, is he winning?
Oh my
The black
God.
rook can land on the second rank.
Oh, rook f2, it's a good start, but that queen on c3, it covers all the bases.
Wow, it feels like there's tactics in the air. Magnus offering a trade of queens now. Fabiano will say no. Look at that white king. It's naked all on its own.
Wow.
Coming in and behind.
Can he take another pawn and get some passes of his own? But that d pawn will start running through a queen c4 check. That's a deadly threat.
Well, Fabiano's now 2 pawns to the good. Surely he's going to turn this material advantage into victory.
And if he does start pushing the pawn, there was a threat of a3, and finally it does arrive on the board, offering a queen trade. He will reject it because it's all about getting to Magnus's king right now.
So he gives away a pawn to open a file on the left-hand side of your screen. The white king is lacking shelter, so Magnus doing everything he can to put his pieces in front of it. But Fabi's going after the d5 pawn, and he's got passers of his own. At some point, Fabiano can start pushing his pawns, but some nervous moves from both players.
Real nerves now showing Fabiano giving a check with the black rook. The problem is black's pawns act as shelter. He doesn't really want to push them until necessary, but big threat. The black rook threatening to go to f3 with a nasty pin on the white queen. All the checks. Look at that white king, though. Just too bare. No protection around it. Fabiano needs to pounce, needs to win this game. He's outplayed Magnus.
Whoa! And there's a check on b2. Is that super dangerous for white's king, forcing it on the a file?
So the king can run. The question is, can it hide? And it's hiding in front of that pawn on b4. On the left-hand side of your screen, you see Magnus's king. There aren't too many pieces remaining. He's out in the open. Can that d pawn suddenly become a queen? Is Magnus actually the one with the upper hand?
It's really possibly turning around right now. All 3 results possible. A few checks. The position repeating itself. Will Fabiano bail out with a draw? This position's been seen already. If he keeps checking the white king...
Fabi wants more.
He wants more. He's playing for the win. No safe squares for Magnus's king.
You have to go on to the c file.
You have to step forward. You have to run forward with the white king.
But I think it's losing. You go up to c7, it goes diagonally. The black queen steps up 1 square to a7 with check. And I think it's a mating net. The rook will slide over at the end. I think that Magnus is about to get checkmated.
And Magnus, he slows down, but he's got 6 seconds to decide now. The rook can go on to the c file and win the queen.
He gives up his queen, Magnus Carlsen. Surely Fabiano's going to take it. But look at the white pawn. The remaining white pawn is so far advanced. Still not over yet. Magnus has lost his queen, but he's still fighting.
He's fighting because it's all relying on these 2 pawns moving ahead. And Fabiano Caruana on seconds. Can he convert this with just 4 seconds on the clock?
I think he made those quick moves to gain the increment. Reminder to everybody, 3 seconds added every single move you make. So a quick check, go block that pawn, and then push your own pawns. Fabi can win this game. Even if he loses queen for those 2 pawns, then he can push the pawns of his own. A rook can't stop, but he gave it away with check.
Wow, he just blundered the pawn with check. He should have pushed the other one, the g-pawn. Wrong choice there, and Magnus is alive. Look at those white pawns, paralyzing the black queen.
And this can be scary for black because now the queen can't move anywhere with the check without allowing the d-pawn to promote. And Magnus does he have enough to hold this?
Well, the problem for Magnus is that g-pawn will be a decoy. It's not to sacrifice itself. The rook on d3 can't move because the d7 pawn in front of the queen will be captured. Both sides, they're struggling a bit here. Fabi doesn't know where to go, but now it's winning for Magnus. He brings his rook all the way down.
Rook e8?
He chooses the wrong square. He trapped his own queen.
And it's handshake.